someone that's afraid to let go. You decide if you're ever gonna let me know. Yeah, suicide if you ever try to let go.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Nick here, and I'm back with a new tech review. It's been months, I know. This year has just not been the year for my tech reviews. Last year, it was throughout the whole summer season, I did a lot. And I don't know if I promised I'd make a lot, probably because I didn't have a lot of technology, or I had a little bit less than I did last year. I think I sort of already explained this in my other tech reviews. I'm about to buy another iPhone in just a couple of days, another old iPhone. I'll tell you all the story at the end of the video. But today we're going to be doing a review on the iPhone 3GS. This is actually one I've been wanting to do for a good while at this point. I've had this phone for like a year, and I've had just about a lot of experiences with it, with jailbreaking, doing stuff. And I think I have a lot of experience that's good enough to make a review. So again, this is one I've been wanting to do for ages now, probably because of how old the phone is and the operating system it's running. I don't know, there's many reasons also. But I also plan to do another video with this iPhone later on, as well as a couple other my devices. You guys will find out soon. It's going to be a collab between me and this other YouTuber. Don't know when that'll be out, maybe next month or something. It depends, because I'm also waiting on something else that I probably won't get back till Christmas, but yeah, later on we'll talk about that. But anyways, let's begin with today's review. So the iPhone 3GS came out in 2009 and was the first ever S upgrade to an iPhone. This was the third ever iPhone ever made, and this was basically your usual S upgrade. It was also the first one, like I said earlier, just minor incremental upgrades. All it brought was a faster processor, brought a better camera that could record video with, and I think that's also about it. Design pretty much remained identical to the iPhone 3G from the previous year. The front is made of glass, the sides are made of stainless steel, and the back is made out of plastic. And it's a very retro design, probably even more than the iPhone 4. And it definitely brings back memories to when my aunt and my dad, they both had old iPod touches back in the day, and it reminds me so much of it because the design was sort of similar, even though the iPods are made of stainless steel. I think the main reason is because of the operating system it's running. It's running iOS 6. Well, my aunt's old iPod didn't run iOS 6. I think she had the older second or third generation, but I know my dad had an iPod Touch 4 because it had a camera. And I don't remember what software it was on, but it was definitely, it's mostly nostalgic because of that schemorphic design. I'm pretty sure a lot of you kids from the early 2000s know exactly what I'm talking about. This iPhone ran all the way from iPhone OS 3.0 to iOS 6.1.6. And it actually doesn't run terribly for its age. Well, maybe on a software level, but actually doing intensive everyday tasks can be a bit painful, like loading the App Store, as you just saw. And yeah, you heard me right, I said iPhone OS at first. Apple didn't change it to iOS until iOS 4, that's around when the iPad came out. iOS 6 is pretty limited on what you can do nowadays, but it's still very nostalgic because of the design. I don't think a lot of people are surprised that this version of iOS is pretty limited, considering it came out 8 years ago and it's running on this 11-year-old phone. I'll talk more about the tech specs at the end of the video, but let's continue off with the design. At the top of the phone, we have the power button, and we also have a headphone jack, which is a weird place to put a headphone jack, but at least it has one. Also, it has the SIM card tray on the top. Now, after the iPhone 4, the SIM card tray would go on the right. The first 3 iPhones would have it on the top, and the SIM card tray was actually a little bit different. It carried micro SIM cards as opposed to nano SIM cards now. So basically, it carried bigger SIM cards as opposed to the tiny SIM cards that, the newer iPhones take. This was changed in the iPhone 5. On the sides of the phone, we have the volume buttons and the ringer and mute switch. And at the bottom of the phone, we have the 30-pin charging port. I mean, if you remember these old chargers, they're definitely nostalgic, and I guarantee you at least have one of those chargers in your drawer somewhere. I think the worst part about these chargers is you can only connect them in one side, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us would probably always try to plug it in the wrong side. I don't know. I feel like that's definitely something that a lot of us who remember that kind of stuff The display on the iPhone 3GS is terrible with a 3.5-inch display. Now that's not the problem here because back in 2009 this was completely normal, and not to mention again this was the third ever iPhone ever, so I don't think for that alone it's not a problem. But it's the screen resolution I'm talking about. The resolution is 320 by 480 and it has a pixel density of 165 pixels per inch. You can see the pixels, and that's the problem here. The display just does not look good. The Retina display was introduced the next year with the iPhone 4, and holy cow, it just looks so much better in every single way. Not to mention, this display has a crazy blue tint whenever you kind of tilt the phone, and it just looks terrible. But I think this was standard for 2009, and I don't think any phone had anything better, or probably was almost the same. And this just makes me appreciate the iPhone 4's display a lot better. Battery life on the iPhone 3GS is going to vary device to device depending on how used it's been over the years, but because these phones are 11 years old, most of these batteries are pretty worn out. This battery size is 1220 milliamp hours, which sounds pretty bad, but then again, the phone doesn't really have a lot to power because, of the operating system and the display. Personally, for me, my iPhone 3GS model is okay. It can die after a day or two on standby, but for the most part, it's not really that bad, at least on my model. I can't say the same for everybody else though. Oh, something else I forgot to mention of the design is the plastic does not really age that well, and it has a tendency to crack, especially around the charging port. That's where you would mostly see 3GSs like that. Mine is actually in pretty good condition and has no cracks at all, except a bunch of scratches on the back, but it's plastic, so you can't be surprised. Camera wise, we have a pretty terrible 3 megapixel camera that can record video in 480p at 30 frames per second. Believe it or not, this was actually the first iPhone that was able to record videos, so it was a big improvement over the last iPhone. And the camera is pretty bad, but back in 2009 this was top of the line, and in good lighting, I guess photos aren't the hot garbage you would expect. There is no selfie camera on this phone, and that didn't come out until the next year's iPhone 4, so if you want to take a selfie, you'd have to do it the old-fashioned way. But again, this camera is not very good, and for 2009 I think it did the job just well. But anyways, here are some photo examples for y'all to see for yourselves. This is being filmed on the iPhone 3GS, and I don't know. I don't know what to say about this camera. Now moving on to the processing power. The iPhone 3GS contains a 600 MHz processor and 256 megabytes of RAM. That is barely any memory. That's like a quarter of a gigabyte. And iPhones nowadays, like the iPhone 12 Pro, have 6 gigabytes of RAM. So it really goes to show how far we've come in processing power. The iPhone 3GS runs up all the way to iOS 6.1.6, which is actually pretty cool. And the best thing about it is it actually runs fairly well, at least on a software level. Intensive tasks like loading the App Store or internet browsing is going to be painful because of the amount of memory. But for the most part, things are actually fairly smooth, at least, scrolling through, the home screen and loading some apps, it actually doesn't run terrible, considering especially that it's the last version of iOS it runs on. And we all know how the next 2 iPhones after this one would end up. I'm talking about iPhone 4S. But yeah, it doesn't run terrible. at least on a software level. And it's just the intensive things can get pretty slow, just because of the amount of memory. But for the most part, let's say if you were to use this for texting and calling, you would probably be fine, maybe, except for maybe the 3G speeds, because this does not go up to 4G. Now, the software itself, iOS 6, is basically nostalgic to almost everybody. Probably the two main reasons is because of the skeuomorphic design. Now that we have such a flat, boring design, not that that's a bad thing, but the skeuomorphism was like way more nostalgic. And also iOS 6 was the last version of the classic iOS before iOS 7 changed things up. And at this point, this firmware is obsolete, and I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. This version came out in 2012. There are a couple things you can do. You can run some older games that used to run back in the day, like Temple Run, Tic-Tac-Toe, and all that kind of stuff. I would not go as far as heavy gaming. I actually downloaded Grand Theft Auto 3 on here for fun, and not only is it pretty slow, the graphics look terrible because of the display. But there are some nice advantages to iOS 6. For example, you have cover flow, which is actually pretty cool. Something that the newer music apps doesn't have, and it definitely looks, it gives it a nice vibe and all that kind of stuff. iOS 6 also had a bigger variety of wallpapers and all that before, after iOS 7, they were kind of removing some things or some wallpapers that looked really nice. However, there are a couple things that don't really work anymore, like the weather. It doesn't load for me. This is when Apple Maps was introduced, and here it is crap. I'm pretty sure everyone remembers the controversy between Apple Maps and iOS 6. And here it runs pretty slow because of, the processing power. But, yeah. Also, in iOS 6, the volume HUD was actually transparent. Between iOS 7 and 12, the volume thingy would always block your screen and you couldn't see most of your thing. Thankfully, Apple changed this in iOS 13, and now iOS 14 has the newer volume HUD and the new ringer mode screen too, or the animation, just so it doesn't block all your stuff, it's like on the side. App support on iOS 6 is not really there anymore. It's pretty limited, and you can basically download the latest compatible versions of most apps. Or at least you were able to up until last year, when it would always say you were not able to download it and that kind of thing. Luckily, there is some way to bring life to this phone, or to actually get that to work. And that is jailbreaking. I actually made a tutorial months ago on how to jailbreak the iPhone 3GS on iOS 6. Link in the description. But yeah, by jailbreaking, you can basically add tweaks, and you can basically install tweaks to get things to work again. Like I installed a tweak to get apps running again. And I even installed Siri, so I got to mess around with the old Siri, even though eventually at one point I'm going to downgrade my iPhone 4S to iOS 6. And yeah. However, my jailbreak process was tethered. So basically the way it works is every time this phone dies, because the battery sometimes when I leave it on standby for too long, it just dies, I just pull out my old MacBook, the original MacBook, which I just now realized it was the original MacBook, not the 2007 model. And I just plug that phone into the computer. I open up Red Snow. I select the IPSW for the firmware. I use 6.0, not 6.1.6. I mentioned this in my tutorial. And then I just boot it. I put it in DFU mode, and, I let it do its thing. And, the thing turns on. So it's kind of a complicated process, but it actually doesn't take too long, and I'll take this over anything. Like, it's better than not having a jailbroken iPhone. So by jailbreaking, I just basically installed older versions of apps. I installed Netflix on here, and it doesn't look very good just because of the display. And I also installed the Wi-Fi speed test, see how the Wi-Fi runs on the iPhone 3GS, and it's terrible. I can't even say how bad it is. But I also installed a bunch of older games, as you guys saw. I installed Tic-Tac-Toe, Temple Run, and all those other older games that came around the time of iOS 6. I don't know, just something about iOS 6, like, it holds a special place in my heart, probably because that, if the skeuomorphic design, that it was the last classic version of iOS, and it actually ran very well across all its devices. And It's that good that I'm actually going to make a video about iOS 6 on all my devices I have that support iOS 6. I'm going to try to get them downgraded. Speaking of downgrade, you can actually downgrade the iPhone 3GS to iOS 4.1, which I'm actually going to do right after I do that iOS 6 video. Alright, so I think that's just about everything. Now let's actually talk about if this phone is worth buying or not. Okay, I'm clearly joking. No, it's not worth buying. Yeah, that would be ridiculous. While it's not horrifically slow, it can't do most things that it does anymore. However, if you want to buy this to add to your collection, I guess that's a different story. And if you want to mess around with it, jailbreaking, this is a good place. On eBay, you can find these for as low as $10 and as high as, well, I don't know, it depends on the condition. Most of these either are in not that good condition. They're either cracked on the the screen is either cracked or it's cracked on the plastic. But I actually bought mine for $8 and it's in pretty good condition. No cracks at all, just some scratches. But that's really about it. So yeah, if you want to add this to your collection, I would definitely I definitely recommend this because it's very retro. But actually using it, if you would actually want to use it as your daily phone, please slap yourself across the face and just buy an iPhone SE, the 2016 model. You can find them for under $50, and that would just be like the amount of times it will be better is like the last number in existence. Alright, this video is getting really long, holy crap. So yeah, let's wrap the video up. It's about so far 16 minutes long as I'm saying this. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm sorry I'm not doing these tech reviews that much. I'm a lazy boy. I'm super lazy and I don't have that much things to work with at the moment. However, right now I am about to buy an iPhone 6 in immaculate condition. I'm not going to buy one, but my friend's going to give one to me. So basically what happened was last Friday, I was doing the experiment with my iPhone 6 and I dropped it. And then the touchscreen stopped working completely, so it doesn't work. So this iPhone 6 that my friend's giving me is going to be in basically brand new condition. And with this old iPhone 6 of mine, I might just do a destruction video. And yeah, the holiday season's here, guys. I'm excited for Christmas. I'm excited for 2021. Hopefully COVID will come to an end that year. Probably not, obviously not the very, it'll be at least a good while into 2021 when COVID ends. But I don't know, I'm just excited for the future, that kind of thing. And so yeah, guys, so that's it for this video. So thank y'all so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.